video 40, the 40th video in the Flow Certified Professional Online Training series. We're going to be looking at successful transformation and scaling. There are two parts to this section, Part A and Part B. And in the first part, we're going to look more at the scaling and help executives sort through some of the noise that they're going to be up against. And in the second one, we're going to, Part B, we're going to actually show you how to measure all of this and try to make heads and tails of this. So I got some final thoughts on the key responsibilities for executives governing agile organizations, prioritizing epics, knowing your velocity, some of the methods and practices, some of the elements of enterprise flow, scaling agile, Workstreams and Cadences, and then a little bit about Agile PMOs. If you're using PMOs in your organization, you're going to want to shift them over to Agile as soon as possible. And that's going to be a culture shock for your PMOs, because most PMOs who have been trained in the traditional methodologies, they'll be completely blindsided by what they actually need to do in order to provide the information and trend lines back to the executives so that they can make good decisions. So we had talked about the vision, culture, and managing the communication flow in the previous video. We're going to talk a little bit more about the prioritization and knowing your organization's velocity, how to do that. You have to have flexible KPIs and baseline starting points to measure the increases in throughput, velocity, productivity. But that at the same time, have a measure that is portable between teams using various agile tools. Because if you've got guys using Kanban who are doing continuous flow, if you've got other teams that are using a hybrid between agile and traditional, or if you've got teams using Scrum or Scrumban or XP or whatever methodology they're using, it's going to be a challenge to be able to take that dissonance that you get, asynchronous reporting basically, and try to create a synchronized view out of the asynchronous. And that's tough to do. Now, for executives that aren't familiar with agile methodologies, we talk about in this 11th annual, I think we're up to 13th or 14th right now, it's still around 70%, because if you look at Scrum XP, that's 10%, so that's 68%. And if you include Scrumban here, now you're up to 76%. It goes up and down every year depending on how people are answering the questions. And basically it's over 70% of all Agile is Scrum, or a Scrum derivative. So for people who keep saying, oh, well, XP, that's one of the ways to go. Well, XP for software development is probably a great thing. It's 1%. And if you look at some of these others, this is from a few years ago, some of these aren't even on the list anymore. So the elements of enterprise flow. You have to be able to cascade your vision. It has to be simple, has to be clear, and you make sure that people are focusing on the vision. What is the vision that we're trying to deliver? Got to prioritize. You got to make it visible. You got to have big visibility for what you're doing. Got to have short cycles, small batch sizes, intrinsic motivation, and transformation. If it's not coming from the internal, you're never going to shift the mindsets. The decision making and governance needs to be moved away from the executive suite down, as far down and deep into the organization, to the lowest level of the organization that you can do, if you're ever going to make flow work in your organization and to get all the benefits of the agile investments that you're making. When you get into scaled agile methodologies, SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework, is 28, 29%. They've been right around there for the last 3, 4, 5 years. Scrum of Scrums, personally, I don't even believe that should be on the list as a scaled framework. Or I guess they're doing methods and approaches, so I guess that's okay. But I wouldn't even put that on the list because that just tells me people don't know what they're doing. Internally created methods, lean management, agile portfolio, you just see the percentages just diving exponentially downwards. Large scale Scrum is around 3% in this one, and by the time you're to the bottom, you're down to 1%. So it's just important to remember that SAFe is the choice right now for many organizations, but that doesn't mean it's the right choice, and that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to scale, because if the homework hasn't been done at the team level, and if you haven't gotten your teams up to a level where they can actually do Agile and Scrum and do it well, you can scale all you want, and all that's going to do is amplify everything that's wrong at the team level. So knock yourselves out, but I would suggest not doing that. What's really important is to get the cadences lined up. Most of the time you already have these meetings. It's important to figure out how to dovetail in everything that's happening at the team level into these upper level cadences. So if you have portfolio governance, you might be meeting quarterly to go through those reporting. You might still be having monthly updates, but you're probably doing quarterly reporting at this level. At the portfolio level, you better be doing the project backlog prioritization or the product backlog prioritization of the key epics of what you're doing. Epics should be taken care of at the portfolio level. Program level, you can start doing features and getting down into user stories, and the epics are still going to come down to the program level, but you need to break it down from there. And multi-team project management, that's the PMO, the project management offices. Cross dependencies and integration items are not necessarily the strength of Agile, and so you need people who actually can understand what's going on with Agile and help those teams communicate in a way that the cross dependencies and integration items are taken care of. I've been pushing for years to use big room planning. I used to call it the walkabout workshop, and would do half-day workshop with companies in order to help them understand how to smoke out the cross dependencies and integration items. And the big room planning will have about 100 people in that room or more, 12, 15, 18 teams that are going to come together. And by doing the walkabout, where the product owners stay with their backlogs and the teams walk to the next station, and they interview each of the product owners, by the time you're done, you're going to have smoked out a lot of things that the teams hadn't thought about in the way of integration. And that's a powerful tool, even for traditional program management, to be able to do that. Most program managers have to do this through a whole different way and methodology of getting that information, and you might actually miss key cross dependencies or integration items that later just come back and bite you. Another thing is, whenever you can, please create persistent dedicated teams that can work together for more than a year at a time. I know that's not always possible to do, but whenever possible, create persistent dedicated teams. You're going to get much more benefit out of that. At the one client where we were able to go from 58 projects to 124, it took us a year and a half to sort everybody into persistent dedicated teams, but that also helped us achieve more than doubling of the organization's throughput and velocity. If you're using Agile PMOs, excuse me, you need to focus on vision. You need to have really clear definitions. You have to distill clear agreements, Have clear short plans and time frames for delivery, and drive to success with frequent communication via reviews and retrospectives. Now, the Agile PMOs and program management, they're going to change how they work. And so these are probably the top 5 items that the Agile PMO will need to do. And it's going to be things that they might not have been working with before, at least not in the way that we're doing it. Here's an example of breaking down the VSBT: vision, strategy, people, and tasks. The vision could be coming from portfolio or even the C-level. Programs are still going to have their vision, but their strategic implementation. The project processes and things like that, that's how you group people together. And then the teams and tactics are what you're going to do to deliver the tasks and the user stories to get everything done. And you'll notice that at the top level, that's very abstract, but when you get down to the task level, that's very concrete. And that's how you take things from abstract to concrete. That's how you take it from the clouds to street level and actually deliver on the vision that the organization wants to deliver. And all of these projects and processes and whatever, programs and so on, they all need to be linked to vision and strategy. And that's always a disconnect in basically every company I've ever seen. If you can make the teams persistent and dedicated, instead of breaking up a team for each project, instead you keep the team together and assign projects to the team. So you reverse it. And by doing that, the team is able to get to higher and higher levels of performance. And it will also quickly reveal if somebody on the team isn't pulling their weight. The team, using agile methodologies, will be able to mitigate that and or fix it. So for this section, we're coming up on 81% complete, so we're 4/5 of the way there. Good job hanging in there. We went through some final thoughts for the executives governing Agile. You got to prioritize those epics and know your velocity. This includes knowing which Agile methods are appropriate where. Now, the executives aren't going to be experts in knowing down at the team level what's best for which team, but everybody in between better know. And so we went through the elements of enterprise flow and scaling Agile, workflow cadences, some things for the Agile PMOs. And again, we're only scratching the surface here. I mean, this is still a lot of information to absorb and digest, and we've only scratched the surface. So one of the toughest things that an executive is going to be up against when looking at becoming an agile organization is how to create persistent teams. How can your organization create persistent teams? Might happen at the program level rather than at the team level. I've seen organizations where they're doing huge product development efforts, and it's got 200, 250 people in that program. Well, it's multi-team, and so you're going to need to treat it as a program rather than as a project. You can just throw out the term project in that case. And specialists, sometimes, we got these people and they're specialists in X, Y, and Z. They might be part of multiple teams, but remember, you can only slice a person so thin before you hit gridlock. And if you've sliced a person too thin, then you're basically not just getting zero productivity out of them, it's probably negative and going backwards.